Hi, I'm Carly Findlay, and I am a writer, a speaker, appearance activist, and a pretty much voracious reader in lockdown. I write on disability and appearance activism. I also write on pop culture. I wrote my book, Say Hello, which is a memoir. It is out through HarperCollins, and you can borrow it from the library or buy it or listen to it online. And I'm also editing Growing Up Disabled in Australia, which is out next year. Growing Up Disabled in Australia was due to be out in June, but because of COVID, it has been put off until February 2021. There are loads of amazing stories in there from disabled people, some of whom you'll know and some of whom you don't know, but I'm very excited to introduce them all to you. So I am a campaigner for people with disability. I have been for probably around 10, 11 years now. I didn't always identify as disabled, even though I have a lifelong skin condition. It wasn't until I met other disabled people that I started to realize that we experience the same barriers. So while our impairments might be different, we experience the same kinds of systemic and everyday barriers in society. So some of the discrimination I've experienced is very similar to the discrimination people with other types of disabilities experience. So I've been writing and speaking publicly about my life and about disability issues more widely for probably around 10 years now, and I started writing for a Victorian government website back in 2010 after I started my blog, and since then I've written for places like the ABC, The Age, SBS. I've also written for Sydney Morning Herald and CNN, which was pretty exciting to get an invite to write for CNN this year. I also speak. I speak on the topics that I've talked about here, so disability, appearance diversity, and I also do a bit of training in social media and accessibility. And I also work at Melbourne Fringe as access and inclusion coordinator, so I help artists make their shows more accessible. I also help artists who are disabled and deaf put on shows in the festival and take part in our programs. And I work to educate the wider sector in becoming more culturally competent around disability. So that's a bit about me. I really like reading. I like audiobooks the best, and I like cooking and eating. I have been a bit partial to watching streaming services in lockdown, but I'm generally not a huge TV watcher. But I have been watching the ABC and SBS a lot in lockdown, and a little bit of Netflix as well. And I really like cooking. I've bought a cast iron pot, which I hadn't had before during lockdown, and I have made many warming, comfortable casserole or stew or soup or pasta in the pot. Ottolenghi has been a cookbook I've been going back to as well during this time. So creative resilience, what does that mean to me? I feel like everybody's been forced to be resilient right now. I have always been resilient through my life. I think it comes with having constant discrimination and questions and curiosity in relation to my appearance. But this type of resilience is a lot different. I feel like there was a day in March where everything changed. It was Friday the 13th, and I was giving a speech at the Royal Melbourne Hospital, and then I got a whole heap of emails to tell me that all of my future work has been cancelled. The comedy festival was cancelled, and of course I've got lots of friends and colleagues in the arts industry, and so I saw so many people lose their work overnight. And then we started working from home, and we still are. So it's been this real lesson in having to innovate. I've been really surprised at how long it's taken for disabled people especially to be able to work from home. And now that everybody's working from home, it's proven to be really easy, and it's proven that we can be trusted, that we are productive working from home. A lot of my freelance work has been from home, and so I am used to that, but I'm not a huge fan of working from home in a team environment. I really miss my Melbourne Fringe colleagues. I miss, you know, the chats around lunch, and I miss work drinks, but I also miss just getting in there and doing the work as part of a physical team. So while we're all disconnected physically, we are connected online, and that's been fun. But I found that my resilience has been forced to happen when I have to not only do the work but be my own IT tech person. I find that quite tricky. I've also found that I've been more innovative in how I work now. A lot of the time we can now work on Zoom, we can record, we can do transcripts, and I wasn't doing that before. But these things are really making it accessible for people. Being able to do a transcript on a recorded session is amazing, because it means that people who are deaf or hard of hearing or need a transcript or captions can access that. So that's been really good to see. I think as well, creative resilience means saying that it's okay not to be at our full potential, not to be working at the level we were working last year. We have to acknowledge that lots of people are grieving right now, grieving that the life that was and the uncertainty of the future, and not knowing when things might get back to a new normal. And so it is okay if we can't manage the excessive workload that we were doing before COVID. It's okay if we can't do social Zooms, or if we have to turn our video off during a meeting because it's easier just to listen on our phone. So I think that it's about acknowledging our own limits and acknowledging that this is a really hard time, and that we need to do what we can to get through it. Okay. My book deals directly with my desire not to be ignored, and I wrote it because I wanted to have a book like it when I was younger. I never thought that a person with ichthyosis would be on the front cover of a book. I never thought that the media could represent us very well until I started writing for the media. I joke, which isn't really a joke, that I don't want to see another article about ichthyosis unless I've written it, because the media does such a bad job of portraying people with ichthyosis and people with, other types of medical conditions. And so I really wanted to counter that. I wanted it to be a help guide for people who have skin conditions and facial differences and disability. I also wanted it to be a resource for people who don't have those things, who are wondering how to approach someone, or whether to approach someone who looks different, or how to talk to their child about encountering a person with a facial difference, because that can be really hard. So when I was writing my book, the people I had in mind were a person with ichthyosis who hasn't really felt heard before, or felt seen, or hasn't been able to talk about their condition openly. And I also thought of a person without ichthyosis who was like trying to teach their child about diversity, or encountering an embarrassing moment in a cafe where their child throws a tantrum because they're scared of someone's appearance, because that's happened to me. And so I really wanted this book to be, is to speak to those two types of audiences. The book's been received really well. I get emails from people to tell me how much it's helped them be honest about their own skin condition or facial difference. I get people telling me that it's helped them around knowing the type of language to use when speaking about disabled people, and also educating their kids. And I think one of the best bits of feedback I get is when people say, I really enjoyed your your discussion on pop culture, because there's a lot of stuff in there around when I grew up. I watched the Babysitters Club and I had Cabbage Patch Kids, and I write a lot about my fandom for Darren Hayes, particularly Darren from Savage Garden. And I spoke with Darren recently in lockdown when he was on his Instagram Live, and I joked that my book is single-handedly making Savage Garden relevant again, because so many people are telling me that they've read my book and now they're going back to listen to or download Savage Garden on Spotify. And I really like those bits of feedback as well. So it's been received really well, and it's nice when I get an email from a teacher or a student telling me that they've used it in the classroom, or someone told me the other day they're using it as part of their master's degree, which is really lovely. Doctors have told me that they've used it and recommended it to patients. So yeah, it's been a perfect reception. It's been wonderful. When have I required resilience to be creative? Oh, I think right now it's certainly a lesson in resilience, and I think it's about spacing projects out. I feel like I've got a lot of projects on the go, and it's about making sure that I get all those things done, but also don't burn out, because one of the things I really loved to write. I put loved in past tense because I really loved to write when I wasn't on a deadline, and now I find it harder than now that it's become part of my work. And so I really have to make sure that I continue to find enjoyment in writing, because sometimes it's really, really hard and the words don't flow, and I don't like what I've written or don't think I'm good enough. So yeah, it's that definitely requires creative resilience. I want to talk a bit about beauty privilege now, and it's a topic I address in my book. So for me, beauty privilege is when people, women especially, haven't encountered the discrimination and the barriers those of us with facial differences and skin conditions and disability have. If you are watching this and you've seen someone like you, or who looks like you, or you identify with on TV or in a magazine, who has been portrayed really well, you've got beauty privilege. You see yourself in places. You see yourself cast in a good light. And those of us without beauty privilege are often othered. So when I think about skincare ads, for example, often the medicalized skincare portrays skin conditions as embarrassing or unsightly, but the kind of cosmetic skincare has a whole different narrative. So I really want to change that, and I want to make sure people without beauty privilege are included in the media, in advertising, in fashion, and that they see ourselves. I did a talk recently, just before COVID hit. Well, it was probably already here. One of the last talks I did was at Sydney Opera House on beauty, with Bree Lee and Flex Mummy, and we talked about beauty and social media especially. And one of the things that I would encourage everybody to do is diversify your social media feeds. Follow people who aren't like you on social media, and follow people who are like you. If you are disabled, or you've got a skin condition or facial difference, look up people who are like you. It's amazing how valued and part of community you'll feel when you see other people who are like you. One of the books that I've been reading during COVID, I've been reading many books, but one of the more memorable books that I've read has been Nightingale Point by Luann Goldie. Nightingale Point is about a housing commission tower, and it's set in London in the 90s, and the book is inspired by the Grenfell Tower collapse, and also a tower collapse that happened in Amsterdam. And Luann is a Scottish writer, and she's also a woman of colour. And It was such an amazing book, really memorable for many reasons. I listened to the audiobook, and there were a number of characters who told their stories individually, and all the characters intersected. It was set in a sort of 5-year period from the mid-90s to early 2000s, and it talked about the collapse and the recovery and the relationships built and the relationships destroyed because of it. And one of the things that made me think about it for so long is that it's one of the first books written by, I suppose she's a non-disabled writer, I haven't seen otherwise, where she has used a disability slur throughout half the book. So a disability slur, the R word, is a slur that is very damaging to disabled people. She's used that slur, and generally I give up on books with disability slurs because they are harmful. I was saying to a friend that, who read it, I said, oh, this book's really hard. I think I'm going to give up because the slur was used. And she said, don't give up, don't give up. So halfway through the book, the slur was addressed and they used it as a lesson. And the characters in the mid-90s discussed the problems of the R word, and the way she did it was so clever and heartfelt and respectful that I really wish that all writers who choose to use this language, and I don't think writers should use this language, particularly if they're non-disabled, because the words are so harmful. But she demonstrated that this language can be used as a lesson, and that writers have the responsibility to talk about why this language is so harmful and change it and develop their characters so that they grow, because words on a page are a reflection of the writer, I believe. And so it's so important that other people see this and other writers can take note from Luan. I highly recommend it. Thank you so much for listening to my Book Lovers Club recommendations today and a bit about me. It's been really fun. Thank you.